Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joyabaking.com. Today we're going to make a ricotta cheesecake with a cran-raspberry sauce, and this is what it looks like. On the bottom we're going to have graham cracker crust. We're going to top that with our cheesecake filling, and it contains both cream cheese and ricotta cheese, and it's delicious. The texture is light and it's fluffy and it's creamy. And then we're going to top our cheesecake with a tangy cran-raspberry sauce. So the first thing that you will need to do is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And then you will need a 9-inch, which is 23 centimeter, springform pan. Mine comes in 2 pieces here. Put the bottom plate in there, clamp it shut. Make sure, actually, I didn't press it down. Make sure you press it down. And then you can spray the inside of your pan with one of those nonstick sprays, or I just have some melted butter, and I'm going to use a pastry brush and brush the bottom and the sides. Okay, and then for this cheesecake, we're actually going to bake it in a water bath, and that's what gives us this wonderfully creamy texture and very light and fluffy. So what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that no water gets into my pan, wrecks the cheesecake. So I have actually 2 pieces of foil. So I just put my pan there and then just bring up the sides, like so, and just fold that back. So that's going to give us a nice protection, no leaking. So now for our graham cracker crust, you can make it by hand. A lot of times I do that. Today I'm going to be a little lazy, and I'm going to use my food processor. You will need 1 cup, which is 100 grams of graham cracker crumbs, or you can use crushed digestive biscuits. So for you can actually buy graham cracker crumbs. I don't recommend that. They don't seem to taste as good as when I take the graham crackers and crush it. I don't know why, but that's my personal preference. So if you're using the graham crackers, you will need 6.5 graham crackers. Today, I'm going to use crushed digestive biscuits. It's these things. If you have never tasted them, you must. They are really good. You will need 7 of them. It used to be in the States, it was hard to find digestive biscuits. Now, I find every grocery store I go in, on the international aisle, they usually have a British section, and you will find them. So you have a choice there. And if you're doing it by hand, I usually have a plastic bag. I just, put your graham crackers or whatever, put it in your bag, and then I just take a rolling pin and crush them. But today, like I said, I'm going to be a little lazy. I'm going to use my food processor. So as I said, I'm going to take crush them up a little. Sometimes you can add, if you want, you can add like maybe a tablespoon, 15 grams of granulated white sugar if you want it sweeter. Today they're sweet enough, so I'm just going to leave it without. So now I'm just going to process this until it's nice like crumbs. Looks pretty good. Sometimes, the blade doesn't crush them all, so I just go in there with my fingers to do that. And then you will need 4 tablespoons, 55 grams of melted butter. For this, you can use salted, unsalted, whatever you have. Now, I'm going to add most of it. Depending on how fresh your cookie crumbs are, you may need, not as much butter, or you may need a little extra if your cookies are a little dry. So I'm going to add almost all of it. And then, now if you just did this in a bowl, just put your crumbs in there, add the butter, and just stir it with a fork, spoon. So. Need my blade to get down, or spatula to kind of get the bottom there. I think that might almost be, you just want all your crumbs moistened, and when you kind of grab it, they hold together. So I am going to need all my butter today. Okay. So we are done. Pretty easy. So now I am just going to take that, and we're just going to press it just on the bottom. I'm not going to do up the sides today. So I'm just using my fingers. You can use the back of a spoon, or some people like to take like a glass and press it down. I'm just using my fingers. And once you press the crumbs nice and firm onto the bottom of your pan, we're just going to put this into the refrigerator, maybe, 10 minutes, just to chill it. And that's while we make our filling. So that looks good. So I'm just going to put this into the refrigerator, and then we come back, we will make our ricotta cheesecake filling. So now for our ricotta cheesecake filling. If you have a stand mixer like I have here, use your paddle attachment, or you could use a hand mixer. But before we start, because we're going to do a water bath, it is time to put the kettle on. And if you don't have a kettle, then you could just use really hot tap water, either way. And the first thing, you might want to even do this before you even start even with the graham cracker crust, is to drain your ricotta cheese. You will need 1 pound, which is 450 grams, or 2 cups of now ricotta cheese. I do like to use the whole milk ricotta as opposed to the part skim. You can use a part skim. If you use the part skim, you will definitely have to drain it. But either way, I do like to drain it. So I've just got a fine mesh strainer. If you don't have a fine mesh strainer, you could just line your strainer with cheesecloth, and then just put your ricotta in the top and let it drain. Now you can see I use the whole milk. I hardly have any water. So if you use part skim, you will have more water. And when you buy ricotta, try to find a brand that does not use a gum stabilizer. The texture is far superior if you can get one without that. And ricotta, it's a mild flavored cheese, but the texture, it is light, it's fluffy, it's a little grainy. So the cheesecake, as opposed to like a New York cheesecake that's like dense and then it's very smooth in texture, this is more lighter and fluffier, but it does have a little bit of graininess on the tongue. So we have that going. The first thing, like I said at the beginning, we are adding some regular cream cheese as well. The combination gives us a really nice flavor to our cheesecake. So you will need 8 ounces, 225 grams of cream cheese. Have it at room temperature. Again, as with the ricotta, I do recommend using the full fat. This is not the time to diet. Cheesecake, you don't diet. So, before I do that, we need to do our sugar. You will need 1 cup, 200 grams of granulated white sugar. To that, I'm going to add the zest of 1 lemon. You could use an orange as well, or if you don't even want a citrus flavor, you can leave it out. Always wash your lemons first, or your oranges, and then I'm using a microplane. You could use your box grater, the fine one for this. And then just do the yellow outside, not that white underneath, because that's quite bitter. And then just put it into your sugar there. I do this for a couple of reasons. One, you know, when you grate, the zest kind of clumps, as you can see. And if I put it into the sugar, and I'm just using a fork here, and kind of mix it in, it kind of separates all the little, the peel, so you don't get clumps. And two, the oils from the lemon zest flavor the sugar, so you get a really nice lemon flavor to our cheesecake. Not strong, but just, you know, a little bit of tang. And then for this cheesecake, I am adding 1 tablespoon, 10 grams of cornstarch as a thickener. If you can't find cornstarch, you could use just, you know, flour, and just stir that in. Okay, so I'm going to put that right in there, the cream cheese, and I'm going to beat this just on medium-low speed until everything's all mixed together. You may have to scrape down, you know, the sides and bottom of your bowl as you're doing this, because cream cheese is very sticky. Okay, let's give that a scrape. And now I'm just going to add all of our ricotta that we drained. And again, on medium-low speed, I'm just going to beat that until it's all combined. Okay, so everything's all mixed together. So now we are going to add 4 large eggs. That would be 200 grams of eggs. Have your eggs at room temperature, and along with 1.5 teaspoons, 6 grams of pure vanilla extract. The vanilla is for flavoring. If you would prefer not to have a vanilla flavor, you could just leave it out. So I'm just going to add the eggs one at a time. Beat one in and then carry on. Okay, we are done. As you can see, a cheesecake is really pretty easy to make. Okay, so let's give that, make sure everything's all mixed together. And then I'm just going to pour it to our pan. So now, a water bath. I know a lot of people get intimidated by a water bath. Really, it's just a pan with some water, and you put your other pan inside and you bake it. And it really helps give the texture of the cheese, makes it really nice and creamy and light. I really like it. A lot of times for my New York cheesecake, I don't use a water bath. I want it nice and dense textured. But for the ricotta, I want it very light, and a water bath will help that. So you will need a roasting pan. So the important thing is, when I take my pan and I put it inside, there's area all the way around. So that's what you need, a pan that's large enough that the water can go all the way around. Now, I'm not going to fill it with water here because I find I slop when I try, and it's heavy to carry it over to the oven. So I'm going to do it over there. But what I'm going to do is just pour water, very hot water. Like I said, if you have a kettle, have the water boiling from that, or your tap, just let it run until it gets really, really hot, and put enough water to come at least 1/3 to 1/2 of the way up the sides. The important thing is, when it bakes, you want enough water so it doesn't run dry, and periodically check, because if it does, you will want to add a little more water as your cheesecake is baking. So you know, a third to a half. And then, okay, I'll just tell you everything now before we go over there. You want to bake it for, I'm going to say 50 to 60 minutes until it's set. You can just tell it's set and it doesn't jiggle. I do find with the ricotta cheesecake, there is some browning around the edges, and that's normal, so don't panic. And yeah, so I think that's what we're 50 to 60 minutes. And I'm going to take this over and pour the water in. And I forgot what I was going to say, but now I remember. When this is baking, if the water starts to boil, you don't want that. If you find the water is boiling, turn down your oven temperature because you don't want that. You just want it just sitting there. So here we go. So while our ricotta cheesecake is baking, we're going to make our cran-raspberry sauce. But the good thing, you can make this ahead of time because you can store this in the refrigerator 2-3 weeks, so you can make it ahead. You will need a medium-sized saucepan, and first 3 cups, 300 grams of, I'm using frozen raspberries, you could use fresh, but a lot of times I make this, you know, in the fall, Christmas season. Fresh raspberries are hard to get or really expensive. Frozen, you know, frozen raspberries are really good. It's one of those frozen things that tastes almost as good as fresh. And then it's a cran-raspberry sauce, so you will need 2 cups, 200 grams of cranberries. Because it is the fall season, I am using the fresh cranberries. You can use frozen. You know, cranberries are one of those things that are available only like the fall, October through, you know, into the new year. So what I do, so I can have cranberries all year long, is I buy extra bags and then freeze them. Some grocery stores I do notice are stocking frozen cranberries, but you never know, so I always freeze my own. When you use fresh cranberries, make sure you wash them and pick through them and get rid of any ones with, you know, that are kind of soft and mushy. Don't want to use those. Put those right in there. And of course, we need some sugar. I'm using 1/2 cup, 100 grams of granulated white sugar. Really, at the end of this, you can taste it and adjust the sugar. I like mine like quite tart and tangy, so I'm only using 1/2 cup. You can use more. So I am going to add 1 tablespoon, 10 grams of cornstarch for a thickener, because this is almost, especially if it sits in the fridge a while, it's almost like jam. Actually, I put it on toast. It's so good. And just mix that in. Along with, I like to add a little bit, like just 1 teaspoon of grated lemon zest. It kind of, you know, just perks up all the flavors. So again, same thing as before, wash your lemon, microplane or the fine grater. And again, I'm just going to mix that in to get rid of, so it's not clumping. And just put that right in there. And we are going to cook this on medium heat. I'm going to bring it up to a boil, and then you want to adjust your heat, and you just want it a gentle boil until it's nice and thick and bubbly. You know, if you've ever made cranberry sauce, same sort of thing. And you can, the longer you cook this, you know, the thicker it will be. But keep in mind, when we put it into cool it down and put it into the refrigerator, it will thicken up too, because we do have that cornstarch. So, you know, keep that in mind. Okay, so now it is just coming up to a boil. And as you can see here, the raspberries have thawed and they've released their juices. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to adjust the heat down. I just want a gentle boil, and we're going to cook this until, just like with cranberry sauce, the cranberries pop open. They're nice and soft and they pop open, and the mixture is nice and thick. So I'm going to say 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, so Cran-Raspberry sauce is ready. Just take it off the heat. It's nice and thick, bubbly. You can really smell those raspberries. So now, what I like to do is just put it into some kind of container, like so. I'm going to, typically what I do is if you have like a canning jar, I just kind of put it like that, let it cool down, and then I open it up, and then I put my seal on there, and then put it into the refrigerator to cool down. Actually, I do prefer making this at least the day before. I don't know whether you've ever made cranberry sauce, but I find the same thing with cranberry sauce. It's quite tart. I mean, I like it the day it's made, but I do think it benefits from a day, 2, 3. Like I said, it can last 2-3 weeks in the refrigerator, so it's a great make ahead. So that's what I'm going to do, and then when we come back, the cheesecake should be done. Okay. So our ricotta cheesecake is done. It's set on top. Looks good. So now I want to take it out of the water bath. Depending if you want to get your counter wet. I don't. So I'm going to put a cloth under my wire rack. And then carefully take it out. There we go. I'm just gonna peel back. Doesn't it looks wonderful? I can smell it. It just smells like. And then what I like to do, find my offset spatula, or you could use a knife, and then I just want to gently go around and make sure it's not sticking to the sides of the pan, because as it cools, it contracts. And if it's sticking to the outside of the pan, what you could get is some cracking. So just running your spatula around will help prevent that. That's good. So what I'm going to do is let this cool down like this on a wire rack. And then once it's cool, I'm going to put it into the refrigerator. I don't cover it right away, because if you do, you could get some condensation on top. So I just leave it like that until it cools right down, and then I cover it. Now, like all cheesecakes, you can, I would say with this one, because it's more milder flavor and it doesn't have that really dense texture like a New York cheesecake, I find I can serve it the same day. I would let it chill down in the refrigerator for at least like maybe 4 hours. But again, like all cheesecakes, you can store it overnight, actually quite a few days. You can also freeze it. But what I'm going to do is let it cool down, put it into the refrigerator, probably about 4 hours, and then when we come back, we will try it. So I let the ricotta cheesecake cool in the refrigerator for about 3 hours. So we're ready to cut it. Sharp knife. There is the metal plate on the bottom here, which helps us. And what I do is I just wipe my knife in between cuts. That way it's a little neater looking. Make sure. As you know, that first piece is always the hardest to get out, but we will manage. So just take a flat spatula. Hopefully I can get it out here. There we go. Oh, doesn't that look lovely? And then, of course, we have our Cran-Raspberry sauce. Now you could take your Cran-Raspberry sauce and spread it over the top of the cheesecake. Personally, what I like to do is just have it in a bowl and let my guests take as little or as much as they want. Put it on the top or on the side. It's so pretty. I mean, especially for the holiday season, that bright red and white, kind of the Christmas colors. So let's take a little bit of that and that's good. If you live like in the States or in Canada, you're probably most familiar with the New York style cheesecake, which, by the way, I do have. If you go to the joyofbaking.com website or the YouTube channel, I have a recipe for that. But the reason I bring that up is you may not be familiar with a ricotta cheesecake. The difference being New York style cheesecakes are made with cream cheese. And cream cheese has a very distinct flavor to it, the cream cheese, kind of tangy. So when you make it a cheesecake with it, you can really taste that cream cheese, and the texture is quite dense. Very creamy and smooth, but dense. I'll contrast that to a ricotta cheesecake. There is a little bit of cream cheese, but it's mainly ricotta. Ricotta is a very mild flavor cheese. I really like it. I just eat it right out of the tub. But it's very mild. And when you use like a water bath on top, and the texture is very light and fluffy of ricotta. So and then the water bath, what you end up with, not a dense cheesecake, a very light and fluffy, creamy, but ricotta is a little grainy. So on the tongue, your cheesecake is a little grainy. And the flavor of ricotta, like I said, is more mild. So it's not that, you don't have that real tang. And the other flavors of the lemon and the vanilla come through, and the sweetness. You know, I really like it. It's very, after a meal, it's very light as opposed to a New York, which is more heavy. Yeah, you really need to try. It's very nice. And along with either the graham cracker, or if you use the digestive biscuits, that goes really nice. You taste both the cheesecake and the crust. And then, of course, the Cran-Raspberry sauce. I love this. It's like a jam. I put it on my toast. It's just wonderful. And the raspberries with the cranberry flavor, nice and tart and tangy. It's, you know, this ricotta cheesecake with a Cran-Raspberry sauce, a really nice dessert. And you must try it. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joyofbaking.com.